They told you your higher self was somewhere out there, floating in the clouds, living in another dimension, watching you like some cosmic parent waiting for you to be worthy. But here's the part they never wanted you to consider. What if your higher self was never above you, but behind every thought you've ever had? What if the voice you keep calling intuition, the sudden knowing that appears without logic, the whisper that pushes you toward truth even when you're terrified, wasn't guidance from another being, but the real you leaking through the cracks of your identity? For your entire life, you've been told to search for your purpose, search for your destiny, search for signs, angels, gods, masters, gurus, cosmic entities, search for a version of you that's supposedly beyond your reach. But what if that search was the trap? What if chasing the higher self was the very thing that kept you disconnected from it? Because the moment you believe the real you is far away, you stay small, you stay obedient, you stay in the ego loop, you stay in the version of yourself the world can control. Look at your life for a moment. Think of every time you felt a subtle resistance, that feeling that something wasn't right, that the path in front of you wasn't aligned, that you were shrinking to fit inside someone else's expectation. Who do you think was noticing that? Your wounds, your insecurity, your trauma? No, trauma doesn't guide. Fear doesn't awaken. Conditioning doesn't warn you. Only consciousness does. You've mistaken the real you for a visitor, a ghost, a signal, a voice that comes and goes. But the truth is far more disruptive. The higher self isn't visiting you. It's trying to take its body back. And that's why awakening feels like discomfort. Because the identity you've been wearing was never designed to hold the full capacity of your consciousness. It was designed for society, for survival, for belonging, for keeping you predictable. But not for truth, not for sovereignty, not for self-realization, not for remembering who you actually are. You've split yourself into two characters your entire life. The one who reacts and the one who knows. The one caught in fear and the one quietly observing it. The one trapped in the matrix and the one who sees through it. Everyone talks about the higher self like it's some future version of who you'll become. A perfected you, a wiser you, a level 99 spiritual you. But listen closely. Your higher self is not your future, it's your original. It's the version of you untouched by fear, unaffected by programming, unimpressed by the matrix, before the world told you who to be, before conditioning built a cage around your perception, before the veil covered what you already knew. And the moment you stop searching outward, the moment you stop begging the universe for signs, the moment you stop assuming the real you is somewhere else, you'll feel it, you'll hear it, you'll recognize the truth you've been sensing your entire life. It wasn't guidance, it was memory. Memory of who you were before the world got loud. Memory of the timeline where you were infinite. Memory of the consciousness that never left, only waited. You don't ascend to meet your higher self. You dissolve what is not you until only the higher self remains. You don't become it. You uncover it. Like dust blown off a statue that was always there. Like darkness retreating the second light arrives. Think of every moment you felt out of place in your own life. As if you were watching yourself from a distance, as if something inside you whispered, "This isn't me." That's the higher self pulling you by the sleeve, not forward, not upward, but inward. Because the real journey was never about ascending dimensions. It was about reclaiming the one you're living in. The dimension where your body stands, where your breath exists, where your consciousness can finally take root in matter. Your higher self is not floating in the sky. It's the one breathing you right now. The one listening to these words not with your ears, but with something deeper. And if your heart feels a strange pressure, if your skin tingles, if something inside you is leaning forward, that's because a truth you've always carried is being spoken aloud. You don't need to call your higher self. You don't need to summon it. You don't need to chase it. You just need to stop pretending you don't know it. Because the moment you stop searching is the moment it steps fully into you. And that's where this video truly begins. In the oldest mystery schools of Chem, long before Egypt carved its first idol in stone, the initiates were taught a secret that almost no modern spiritual teacher dares to say aloud. The higher self was never above you. It was buried within you. In the dim hallways of the House of Life, priest scribes of Thoth walked silently with oil lamps flickering against papyrus walls. These walls weren't decorated with simple art. They were maps of consciousness, diagrams of the soul's architecture, instructions for remembering what every human forgets at birth. Among the most sacred teachings was a story whispered only to those who had passed the first 3 initiations. A story about a fall, not from grace but from remembrance. Humans, they said, did not lose their divinity. They simply forgot how to look at themselves. They called this forgetting the veil of flesh. The moment consciousness steps into a human body, it fragments, splitting into the one who acts and the one who observes. The acting self became the ego, the mask, the survival mechanism, the observing self, the silent witness behind your thoughts. That was the higher self, not floating above in celestial perfection, but nested deep inside your awareness like a seed of fire. To the ancients, this was not philosophy. It was anatomy, the anatomy of the soul, the anatomy of consciousness. This is why Thoth, the god of wisdom, was never portrayed as fully human. He was the bridge, half in the world of form, half in the world of pure awareness. The ibis head symbolized the mind that sees from above, while the human body symbolized the self living within the physical world. Together, they represented the truth. The higher self and the human self were never separate beings. They were 2 angles of the same consciousness. When initiates entered the inner chamber, they stood before the emerald tablet, the most forbidden artifact of the ancient world. Upon its surface glowed the words, "As above, so below, as within, so without." This was not a poetic riddle. It was a literal description of the higher self. As above was the realm of infinite consciousness. As below was the human identity that walks the earth. As within was the inner awakening. As without was its reflection in the physical timeline. The tablet wasn't just a teaching. It was a mirror, reflecting every initiate's own consciousness back at them. When they gazed into it, they didn't see gods or symbols. They saw themselves, the part that had always existed, the part that would never die. The priests of Thoth believed every human walked with 2 shadows, one cast by the sun and one cast by the soul. The first followed your body, the second followed your consciousness through lifetimes, carrying memory, wisdom, and everything you forget the moment you enter a new incarnation. They called it Ka, the higher double, not a ghost, not a guide, but the true you, the blueprint of your potential, the architect of your timelines. It wasn't watching from the sky, it was watching from behind your eyes. This is why ancient texts describe awakening not as ascension, but as reunification, the merging of the acting self and the observing self into one coherent field of consciousness. The tragedy of modern spirituality is that it painted the higher self as a distant deity you must call, pray to, or channel, as if the real you exists somewhere far away, like a celestial parent who barely knows your name. But the ancients called this belief the first illusion. The illusion that divinity is external, that wisdom is external, that truth is external, that you must rise to meet something above you. The Hermetic masters taught the opposite. You do not rise to the higher self. You remember downward, bringing the higher self into the body, into the breath, into the moment. The purpose of every initiation was to break the illusion of separation, to peel back the layers of conditioning, trauma, programming, and identity until the initiate could finally see the witness within the witness, the consciousness behind the consciousness. In the deepest corridors of the temple, beyond the chambers of silence and the pools of reflection, was a teaching almost no outsider has ever heard. It said, "The higher self is not the destination, it is the memory of origin." The origin of your awareness, the origin of your intuition, the origin of your power to shape reality. This is why you sometimes feel as if you're receiving guidance that doesn't match your current level of understanding. Why you have impulses that seem too wise, too ancient, too precise. Because guidance is not descending upon you, it is rising from you. Your higher self does not speak in words. It speaks in vibration, in resonance, in alignment. It speaks through the sudden clarity that cuts through confusion, the inner yes that needs no explanation, the intuitive pull toward what feels like destiny. The ancients depicted this in symbols, the serpent rising, the lotus opening, the sun disk expanding, all metaphors for consciousness remembering itself. In Hermetic tradition, awakening was described as the return of the eye. Not the physical eye, but the eye of mind, the perceiver within perception. When that eye opens, you don't see angels. You see yourself without distortion, without conditioning, without the veil. And that moment of recognition is the true beginning of mastery, not achieving something new, but regaining something ancient. This is why the Emerald Tablet said, "The all is mind, the universe is mental." Because all higher guidance, all intuition, all so-called messages from above are simply the higher self arranging your reality from the inside out. Not signs you follow, but signs you create. Not voices speaking to you, but voices speaking as you. The ancient masters didn't pray to their higher selves, they embodied them. And that is the forbidden truth you were never meant to remember. Because a human who embodies consciousness cannot be controlled, manipulated, or programmed. They become sovereign, aligned, untouchable, free. And that is exactly what you're beginning to remember. Now let's step into what the ancients knew next. How the higher self actually operates in the quantum field. If the ancients understood that the higher self is not above you but within you, then the next question becomes the most important one. How does it actually operate? Not poetically, not symbolically, but mechanically, in the quantum field, inside the mind, and through the architecture of consciousness itself. Because once you understand the mechanism, you stop hoping for guidance and start recognizing that you are the guidance. Let's break the spell. The higher self is the non-local you. Modern science calls it the non-local mind, the part of your consciousness that is not confined to the brain, the body, or linear time. Hermeticists called it the call, the soul double, the observing intelligence that exists as pure awareness. Quantum physicists call it the field of superposition, the aspect of you that exists in multiple possibilities simultaneously. But the truth is simpler. Your higher self is the version of you that is not limited by the identity you're currently wearing. It's not future you. It's the timeless you, the you that exists in every potential timeline, every dimension of possibility, every expression of your consciousness. This is why your intuition sometimes feels too smart, why guidance comes with a clarity you haven't earned yet. Because the higher self isn't guessing, it's seeing from a vantage point outside your timeline, like standing on a mountain while your physical self walks the valley below. Consciousness splits into two modes. To understand the mechanism, you must understand this split. Your consciousness functions in two simultaneous modes. One, local self, bound by linear time, processes information through the brain, experiences, emotions, trauma, identity, navigates the physical world, sees from inside the timeline. Two, non-local self, higher self, exists outside linear time, sees multiple outcomes simultaneously, operates from coherence, not fear, directs synchronicities, aligns you with the timeline that matches your vibration, sees from above the timeline. These two modes are not separate beings. They are the same consciousness experiencing itself from two perspectives. Think of it like this. Your local self is the avatar inside the game. Your higher self is the player holding the controller. The avatar feels limited. The player sees the entire map. The quantum mechanism, the observer effect. At the heart of manifestation, intuition, guidance, and awakening is one principle. The observer collapses reality. The higher self is the ultimate observer, the one perceiving potential timelines before they crystallize. When you get intuitive pings, that's not magic. That's your non-local awareness detecting the highest coherence timeline and nudging your local self into alignment. When you ignore intuition, you're not ignoring a voice from above. You're ignoring the part of yourself that sees further than you can. When you follow it, you jump into a timeline that already contains the outcome you desire. This is why the higher self never argues, never begs, never forces. It simply radiates the path of coherence, because from its vantage point, everything is already visible. Vibration is the bridge between selves. Every emotion you feel is a frequency. Every thought you have is a pulse in the quantum field. Every belief is a tuning fork. The higher self communicates through vibration because vibration bypasses the analytical mind. It bypasses resistance. It bypasses trauma. It bypasses programming. When you feel expansion, warmth, clarity, resonance, that's your higher self saying, this aligns with your true timeline. When you feel contraction, shame, fear, tightness, bodness, that's your higher self saying, this is not you, this is programming. The body is the antenna. The higher self is the signal. Emotion is the translation. This is why awakening is not intellectual. It's vibrational. You don't understand your higher self. You tune to it. The pineal gland, your quantum receiver. The ancients knew this long before neuroscience caught up. They called the pineal gland the seat of consciousness, the eye of Horus, the gateway between worlds. Physically, it's filled with piezoelectric crystals. Energetically, it's the organ that synchronizes local and non-local awareness. When your pineal gland is active, Your intuition spikes. Your awareness expands. Your sense of time softens. You feel guided from within. You sense patterns before they occur. You begin receiving information in nonverbal form. This is why the higher self doesn't speak in sentences. It speaks in impulses, visions, knowing, vibrational clarity, alignment. Language is too slow. Frequency is instant. Timeline mechanics. How the higher self selects your path. Every decision you make opens or closes timelines. Every timeline contains a different expression of your potential. From your local perspective, life feels like linear steps. But from the higher self perspective, life is a constellation of possibilities, a field of branching outcomes, all existing simultaneously. Here's the mechanism. 1. You emit a vibration. Your emotional state, belief system, and attention create a frequency signature. 2. The higher self detects all matching timelines. It sees which outcomes resonate with your current vibration. 3. Synchronicities appear. The field rearranges itself to pull you toward the matching timeline. People appear. Ideas emerge. Obstacles dissolve or intensify depending on your vibration. 4. You follow the signal or ignore it. Your free will chooses alignment or resistance. 5. The timeline locks. Once your inner state stays stable long enough, you phase shift into the version of reality that matches your frequency. You don't manifest outcomes. You tune into the timeline where they already exist. The higher self is your guide through that tuning process, not as an external teacher, but as your original intelligence. Why the higher self feels like a separate being? Because you've spent your whole life inside noise, inside the ego loop, inside the conditioned identity you inherited. That identity is loud, reactive, fearful, linear, attached. The higher self is quiet, non-reactive, timeless, neutral, observing, infinite. The difference in tone makes it feel like two entities, but it's not. It's one consciousness, split by the veil. When you meditate or enter presence, the veil thins, awareness expands, and you feel the part of you that has always been awake. That is the higher self, not above, not beyond, but behind the noise. The role of resistance and suffering. Most suffering is misalignment, not punishment, not karma in the way people think, not cosmic discipline. It's simply the friction created when your local self moves in a direction your higher self is not aligned with. Illness, burnout, heartbreak, confusion, stagnation. These are not tragedies. They are redirects. Interruptions from your original self saying, "This path cannot take you where you came here to go." Pain is the language of misalignment. Peace is the language of truth. Why you cannot lose your higher self? Because you cannot lose consciousness. You can only get lost inside the identity that was built on top of it. Your higher self is not waiting. It's not judging. It's not withholding guidance. It is always here, silent, powerful, patient, like a mountain behind the clouds. When the clouds move, the mountain doesn't appear. It was always there. You simply began to see it. The ultimate mechanism, coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, body, and awareness align, you enter coherence, the state where your local self and higher self merge. In coherence, intuition becomes immediate. Manifestation becomes effortless. Synchronicities multiply. Fear loses influence. Identity softens. Presence intensifies. Life feels guided. You feel more you than ever before. This is what the ancients called the great marriage, the unification of the human and the divine, matter and mind, local and non-local self. This is not mysticism. It is the mechanical operation of consciousness. And once you understand the mechanism, you are no longer guided. You become the guide. Now that you see how the higher self operates in the quantum field, there's only one thing left to do: break the programming that keeps you from hearing it. You've seen the illusion. You've remembered the ancient truth. You've understood the mechanism. Now comes the part no one warns you about, unlearning the identity that keeps you disconnected from your higher self. Because remembering who you are is easy. What's hard is letting go of who you were trained to be. Let's be honest. You didn't build your identity. The world handed it to you like a script, and you accepted it because every child must. Survival depends on agreement. But now, you're no longer surviving. You're awakening. And awakening demands rebellion. Not the loud external kind, but the internal revolution where the false self collapses and the real self takes the throne. Let's break the programming. Programming number 1, you are your thoughts. This is the biggest lie you were ever told. Your thoughts are not you. Your thoughts are the echo of your conditioning, the sum of everything you absorbed before you even learned to question it. Think about it. Did you choose your parents' beliefs? Did you select your culture's worldview? Did you consciously opt into fear, shame, guilt, or self-doubt? Of course not. They were installed, like software, by family, by school, by society, by trauma. So when you hear your mind repeating, "I'm not enough," "I can't do this," "I don't deserve more," "I need approval," who do you think is talking? Your higher self? Never. That's the ego loop, the programmed self. A mask designed to keep you predictable, obedient, and easy to control. The higher self doesn't speak in fear, only the programmed self does. To deprogram this, you must become the observer, not the thinker. The moment you step behind thought, you step into your real identity, not the character, but the consciousness playing it. Programming number 2, you must earn worthiness. This one is vicious. It's the root of 90% of human suffering. You were taught that worth is external, something you chase, achieve, prove, or win. But worthiness is not a reward. It's your baseline state. Your higher self has never doubted your worth for a single second. Only your conditioned self has. Here's the trap. If you believe you must earn worthiness, you will chase it forever. And a being who is always chasing something can never hear the guidance of the higher self. Why? Because chasing is rooted in lack, and lack is the frequency of the ego, not the soul. When you stop trying to be worthy, you stop vibrating in the frequency of "I'm not enough." And the higher self finally has space to step forward. Programming number 3, the higher self is above you. This is the most spiritual sounding lie ever invented. It's poetic, it's comforting, it's beautifully wrong. The moment you place your higher self above you, you create hierarchy, you create distance, you create separation. And separation is the veil. You don't ascend to meet your higher self. You collapse the illusion that you were ever apart. You've been taught to bow, seek, pray, summon, hope, kneel, wait. But the ancients knew better. You do not rise, you remember downward. The higher self is not a deity. It's not your spirit guide. It's not your guardian angel. It's the consciousness you abandoned when you mistook identity for truth. To deprogram this lie, you must stop worshiping your higher self and start embodying it. Programming number 4, the Matrix knows best. Let's expose it. You live in a world engineered for distraction. Every system, education, media, culture, religion, teaches you who to be before you're old enough to ask who you are. They hand you roles. Be productive, be agreeable, be normal, be realistic, be small, be safe. But none of these roles were designed for your awakening. They were designed for the Matrix. Because a person who knows their higher self cannot be controlled. They don't follow rules that contradict truth. They don't obey expectations that crush their purpose. They don't fit inside systems built for fear. And the Matrix hates that. Not because it's evil, but because its survival depends on your unconsciousness. When you awaken, the system loses a participant, and the world you enter is no longer the world you were taught to see. Programming number 5, ego is the enemy. Here's the twist. People think ego is evil, but ego is not your enemy. It's your training ground. The ego is the shell you outgrow, the cocoon you break, the mask you remove. But it's necessary. Without ego, you couldn't experience separation. And without experiencing separation, you wouldn't understand remembrance. The problem isn't ego, it's attachment to ego. Your higher self doesn't kill the ego. It integrates it. It turns the ego into a tool instead of a master. This is why the moment you stop identifying with your ego, something extraordinary happens. The ego collapses and the higher self steps in to lead. The role of suffering in deprogramming. No one likes this part, but it's the most important truth. Suffering is not punishment. It's misalignment. It's the friction created when your life moves in a direction your higher self is not aligned with. Pain says, "This is not your path." Confusion says, "This is not your truth." Emptiness says, "You outgrew this version of yourself." Suffering is the higher self, speaking through resistance, guiding through discomfort, redirecting through collapse. And once you understand this, you never fear suffering again. You read it, you listen to it, you let it show you the exit. The beginning of freedom. Deprogramming is not the removal of beliefs, it's the removal of illusions. You don't delete your identity, you reveal the consciousness behind it. And when the illusions fall, something beautiful happens. Your intuition becomes louder, your fear becomes quieter, your decisions become clearer, your energy becomes steadier, your awareness becomes sharper, your presence becomes deeper. This is not self-improvement, this is self-return. The journey wasn't about becoming the higher self. It was about getting out of the way so the higher self could finally breathe through you. Everything you thought you needed to do, to learn, to prove, to achieve, all of it dissolves when you realize the truth. You are not rising to meet a higher version. You are letting the highest version of you reclaim its place. And that's why deprogramming isn't destruction, it's liberation, it's remembering, it's waking up from the dream of who you were told to be. Now that the illusions are falling, there is only one step left, one moment, one breath, one truth to anchor your entire awakening into reality. The activation. Take a breath, slow, deep, intentional. Because what comes now is not teaching, not philosophy, not information. This is remembrance, a return, a reawakening of the part of you that never forgot. You've walked through the illusion, you've opened the hidden doors, you've seen the mechanics of consciousness, you've peeled back the layers of identity. Now you stand at the threshold of yourself, not the self created by the world, but the self that existed before the world had a name. Listen carefully, not with your ears, but with whatever part of you is leaning forward right now. That quiet, ancient part that recognizes truth the way fire recognizes heat. Because this is the moment your higher self stops being a concept and starts becoming your center. The part of you that has been watching your entire life is no longer content to stay behind your eyes. It wants to step into your voice, your choices, your movements, your breath, your timeline. And for that to happen, you don't need to do more. You need to let go. Let go of who you were trained to be. Let go of the mask. Let go of the story. Let go of the weight that never belonged to you. The higher self is not something you ascend into. It is something you allow, something you receive, something you remember. So let's remember, together. Close your eyes, even if only inside your mind. Feel the center of your chest, not the heart, not the body, but the presence behind the heartbeat. That presence, that stillness, that silent watcher, that is you. It has always been you. It never left. It never abandoned you. It never waited for you to be better, wiser, more spiritual, or more worthy. It waited only for one thing, for you to stop pretending you were someone smaller. Now breathe into that presence. Imagine it expanding inside you like dawn rising through your ribs, a warm, golden awareness pushing through every belief that says, I am not enough, I am alone, I am disconnected, I am lost. Let every exhale strip away the illusion. Let every inhale anchor the truth. You are not calling your higher self. You are making space for it. You are rearranging your inner world so it can finally take the seat that has always belonged to it. And now speak these words inside your mind or aloud, not as affirmation, but as activation. I release the self I was taught to be. I return to the self I have always been. Feel the shift. Feel the vibration change. Feel the alignment settling into your bones. You are not stepping into a new identity. You are shedding the old density. You are peeling away the version of you that was shaped by fear, survival, conditioning, and the expectations of a world asleep. Because the moment those layers fall, there is nothing left between you and your truth. Your higher self does not need to be reached. It needs to be revealed. And revelation happens in quiet, in presence, in honesty, in surrender. So ask yourself, not with words but with awareness, who is listening right now? Not the anxious mind, not the wounded child, not the programmed identity. The listener is the higher self, the one who perceives without judgment, the one who observes without fear, the one who recognizes these words not as new information, but as an ancient memory stirring awake. You can feel it, can't you? That internal shift, like something clicking into place, like your soul exhaling after holding its breath for decades. That feeling is not imagined. It is integration, the merging of the local self and the non-local self, the reunification of the human and the divine. Stay with that feeling, let it bloom, let it rise, let it take up space. Because from this moment forward, you are no longer walking through life as the programmed self. You are walking as consciousness, awake, aware, aligned. You will notice the difference quickly. Your decisions will change. Your clarity will deepen. Your intuition will sharpen. Your emotions will steady. Your reality will rearrange itself to match the vibration of your remembrance. Not because something magical happened, but because something truthful happened. You stopped searching outside, and you turned inward, and in that turning, you found the source. Now breathe again, slow, gentle, purposeful, and speak one final activation. The higher self is not separate from me. The higher self is me. Feel the weight of that truth settle into your nervous system. Feel the old identity loosen its grip. Feel the frequency of your presence rise. This is not motivation. This is not inspiration. This is integration. You are not becoming the higher self. You are allowing the higher self to become you. And from this moment on, you walk differently. You speak differently. You choose differently because you are no longer living from the outside in. You are living from the inside out. This is your remembrance, your return, your awakening. And now your higher timeline begins.